Carlos and Mina was married, but she divorced him because her family forced her to do that because they are rich and he's poor. And after 2 years, they decided to let her be engaged with some man, a family friend. But Mina is not happy with him. She's still in love with Carlos. On the day of the engagement, she noticed Carlos walking to her coldly as she was sitting alone, sad, and she noticed that he became rich and strong. "Good evening, Mina," he said with smirk, and she speaks happily but sad at the same time. "Carlos!" "What are you doing here?" she asked, and he chuckled, then said, "Carlos, it's an engagement party, so it's obvious why I'm here." Mina looked at him and realized he has changed, became more manlier and more elegant. "You have changed a lot." "Well, you can say that," he said as he leaned against wall and crossed his arms. "You look like you were crying before," he said with smirk as he pushed himself off from the wall and walked towards her. "What? I didn't," she said, nervous, and tried to hide her red eyes. Carlos was just smiling while standing in front of her. "Carlos. Oh, really? Why do you care anyway?" she said, upset, and looked away, avoiding his gaze, looking more miserable. "Maybe because I still care about you," he said as he grabbed her chin and forced her to look at him in the eye. "But you never cared," she said with a sad look in her eyes, and tried to avoid his gaze, but he still forced her to look at him, and they were just looking at each other with his hand on her chin. "You're wrong. I cared so much. I loved you," he said as his other hand came to her cheek and caressed it gently. "Liar," she said, and tried to pull away, but his grip on her chin got tighter. Carlos got mad a bit. "I'm not lying," he said, looking at her with dark eyes, and pulled her closer by her waist. "No, don't get closer." She put her hands on his chest as she tried to push him, but his grip on her waist is tight. He leaned closer to her face till it was so close she can feel his breath, and he smirked. "Don't push me, princess," he whispered, leaning his chin to her ear, then got back to look at her in the eyes as his thumb slowly traced her bottom lip. "Don't call me that," she said, and got nervous because of his gaze, then looked away. Carlos chuckled, amused, then grabbed her face and forced her to look at him. "You're so stubborn," he said, then his other hand pushed her hair away and caressed her cheek. "You're one to talk," she mumbled, not liking the way he got close to her. They were still looking at each other. Carlos is enjoying teasing her and feeling the soft skin of her cheek under his hand. "Hmm." He smirked and leaned a bit to get more closer to her while his hand traced her jawline. "You are still as beautiful as I remember," he said, and his eyes went to her lips, then back to her eyes slowly. "Stop it," she mumbled and tried to get away from him, but his hand on her waist is still too strong. Carlos smirked and leaned closer till their faces were inches apart. "Stop what?" he whispered, and she can feel his breath on her face. "Stop touching me," she said in small voice, and his hand went up from her jawline to her hair, and he played with it, then looked at her. "Carlos, why you don't like it when I touch you?" "Yes, I don't," she said stubbornly. He smirked, then leaned closer to her ear. "You're lying," he whispered, and his hand got to pull her hair to the side to have a better access to her neck, while his other hand pulling her closer by the waist. I'm not. She protested, trying to not shiver from his whispers. Then he put his mouth to her exposed neck and chuckled against her skin, then inhaled her scent. He quickly straightened up from her neck and looked at her dad. Good evening, sir. Her dad looked at them and knew how Carlos was holding his daughter close to him. Her dad said, then turned to look at his daughter. Mina, go back to the guests, he said coldly. She felt like crying. She looked at the ground, unable to say anything, while she tried to avoid looking at Carlos. He saw her reaction and knew how much she wanted to stay with him, but he can't do anything but remain silent. She looked at him for a moment with sad eyes, then went to the guests. He watched her leave, then looked at her father. Excuse me, sir, but can I talk to you for a moment? He asked politely. Her dad looked at him annoyed and asked, Dad, what is it? Can we talk somewhere private? He asked, and her dad looked at him suspicious, then looked at his daughter and saw her sad alone with the guests, so he agreed. Fine, let's talk. They were in one of the rooms alone, and he knew they won't get interrupted. I want to ask you something, he said while looking at him. Her dad looked at him impatient and said, Dad, what is it? Don't waste my time. It's about your daughter, he said calmly, and her dad crossed his arms and looked at him coldly. What about her? I want to marry her, he said while looking at him in the eyes to see his reaction. Her dad looked at him surprised, then he chuckled and said, And what makes you think I'd let you marry her? Because she loves me and I love her, so why don't you give us a chance? He said, keeping his calm. Her dad laughed sarcastically. And why would I give you a chance? What are you? A simple guy? You're not even rich? So you judge me by my money? He asked, crossing his arms with a cold glare.